Hi fellow gardeners and Happy New Year! In the new year, our very first video is going to be about the stars in almost every garden, and that is vegetables in the nightshade family. Today we're planting the seeds of tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, and also we'll plant the seeds of ground cherries, which are also in the nightshade family, and they all are planted at the same time and they all grow in a similar manner. Today is January 4th and we live in North Texas, Zone 8A, and here we start seeds pretty early because we plant them outside at the end of March or beginning of April, and the seedlings will have almost 2.5 months to grow and turn into mature plants. Another reason why we start seeds so early is we have a really short growing season before our Texas summer heat sets in, and in Texas summer these vegetables don't produce anything. They stop growing flowers or setting fruit. That is why we need to start them early so that by the time we plant them outside they will be in their mature state, they will be in their flowering stage, and they will start setting fruit soon after we plant them in the ground outside. For potting soil, I like to use Miracle-Gro organic container mix. I know a lot of gardeners like to avoid this big brand soil, and I'm all for supporting small businesses. In fact, several years ago, I used potting soil from a small company, and my seedlings did not grow at all. They were stunted, they were yellow, and by the time I realized what the problem was, it was too late, and I did not have any seedlings to transplant outside. And I've been using Miracle-Gro potting soil for a few years. It's been a great performer. It always grows strong plants, and with this potting soil my seedlings never fail. Some gardeners like to use a seed starring mix because it's finer and little tiny seeds can be easily germinated in that mix. I don't use a seed starring mix. I simply use Miracle-Gro organic container mix. Even for very tiny seeds like thyme seeds, I simply sprinkle them on top and they still germinate and they grow just fine. Their roots do find their way even in the large pieces of wood in the soil. Another big reason why I like to use Miracle-Gro container mix is it has a lot of good nutrients for your plants, so you don't have to fertilize your seedlings soon after they germinate. Whereas with a seed starring mix, you would have to fertilize your seedlings once they start growing their true leaves. For tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, and ground cherry, I like to use large containers, and the seedlings will stay in these containers all the way until we transplant them outside. That way, I don't have to transplant them into larger pots. It will save me time, and I can do other gardening tasks during that time. I already filled up the containers with the potting soil. I made it moist, and it's important to make your soil moist before you plant seeds into it. If you plant seeds into dry soil, then when you water them, you will notice that your seeds will float to the top and they might even overflow as the water flows out of the containers. All the seeds in nightshade family are small, so we'll plant them at about 1/4 inch deep, and I'll make just small indentations in the soil, and I'll take about 3 seeds per container and plant them in the container. That way at least one of the seedlings will come up. It's always better to plant more seeds. If you have too many seedlings, you can simply thin them out and leave the strongest seedlings in your containers. And after we plant the seeds, we can just cover them like that. And since our soil is already moist, all I can do is simply spray the seeds from the top. I already covered them, and this will keep the soil moist and the seeds will stay put. They won't be moving around or shifting. In the past, I used plastic plant labels, but lately I've been using only wooden craft sticks, and that's because when I transplant my plants outside, all those labels get lost in the soil, and sometimes I would find plastic labels here and there, and I don't like that. But when I use wooden plant labels, even if they get lost in the garden, they are still wooden and natural, and they simply become part of mulch. And here's a golden rule for every gardener: we must label all our plants. We think that, oh, I'll remember what I planted, but no, eventually we forget what we planted, and then we don't know what we're growing. So we're going to label our plants. The other benefit of using Miracle-Gro container mix is that I've never had a problem with damping off. Damping off is a fungal disease, and it might affect your seedlings. It especially affects dill seedlings, I noticed. Damping off happens when you overwater your seedlings and when there is not enough air circulation, so you might want to put up a fan to create just slight breeze for your plants. I don't have a fan for my seedlings, and I simply try not to overwater them. I try to wait for the topsoil to get dry, and then I water the seedlings. All these seeds need warmth to germinate faster. For that reason, I'm going to put them on a heat mat under our grow light. But if you don't have a seedling heating mat, that's okay. You don't have to use it. If you put your seedlings under a grow light and keep them there, that should be enough warmth from the grow lights to warm up the seedlings and help them germinate faster. Also, some people like to use domes to cover their seeds. I personally don't use domes simply because I know that I will always forget about removing the dome once the seeds come up, and that might lead to leggy seedlings, and I don't want that to happen. And since I don't use any domes, the soil dries up faster. For that reason, every day I spray my seedlings from the top with a spraying bottle, and usually that's sufficient for the soil to stay moist. If you use a dome, make sure to remove it as soon as you notice your seeds have germinated. Because like I said before, if your seedlings stay under the dome for a long time, they will get leggy and weak. After your seedlings germinate and start coming up, make sure you remove the heating mat, because again, that extra heat might lead to weaker seedlings. And just keep your seedlings under a grow light. From the very start, I like to keep the seeds under a grow light. That way, when they start germinating and coming up, they see that bright light and they don't get leggy, they stay stout and strong. I like to keep our grow lights at 17 hours on and 7 hours off. You will also notice that I keep the grow light about 1 inch above the soil level, and even after the seedlings come up, make sure to keep the lights about 1 to 2 inches above the seedlings. When the seedlings are still in the soil, I simply spray them from the top every day, or sometimes twice a day, morning and evening, depending on the condition of the soil. But once the seedlings come up and their roots start getting longer, I water the seedlings from below. That way I avoid the damping off problem and I do not displace the soil. And since I'm using a really good quality potting soil, I'm not going to be fertilizing the seedlings for about a month after they germinate, but after a month I will fertilize them with a liquid fish fertilizer. Before you're ready to transplant your seedlings outside, make sure to harden them off, and we made a video about that if you would like to watch it. In that video, we are showing a really easy and simple way to harden off your seedlings, where you don't have to bring them in and out of the house. You just take them outside once and keep them outdoors until the day you're ready to transplant them. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. Happy gardening year to you all. Bye-bye.